All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this segment of Wave Extra. Anchor Jose Society joining you on this Tuesday night. Of course, coming off a lot of in-depth coverage. If you've been with us, at least from the last week, you remember there was plenty to discuss and, dive into when it came to the trial of Stephen Lawson. Obviously, we remember the ultimate verdict, guilty on both of those counts. A lot of national and even local interest still all these years after Crystal Rogers had disappeared. So obviously, an opportunity for us to discuss all the interesting investigations and the stories that you all want to look into. That's what our team spends, most of the day looking into, trying to see what more we can learn, find those updates, share those with you. So a lot going on in that regard. Tonight, just want to let you all know we were working on something, a couple interviews that I actually had done not too far back. It was just sort of in the wake of when the Kentucky State Auditor, Allison Ball, had confirmed she was going to start her own investigation into what she called several complaints, not just from small businesses, but even big businesses, into the state's lottery process for those licenses, not just to be medical marijuana dispensers, but also those licenses that would have applied to folks, companies that grow the hemp, that were, that is their specialty, and then for processing facilities. And we remember what that process has been like, ever since the legislature had, stepped in, ruled that medical marijuana was fair game. It was going to be legal across the state for approved licensed card holders. The process televised, established with the Office of Medical Cannabis. But it seems, enough of these complaints into the auditor's office, again, from a range of different kinds of businesses, spurred her and her team to want to look a little deeper into what was actually going on. Mind you, it is still an open investigation, an open audit. She couldn't share with us exactly how long this was going to take, but she, Auditor Ball did make time to sit down to talk to us. So what I wanted to go over with you all is just a refresher on some of what had been discussed so far. And most of our reporting, if you remember, you can always go back to wave3.com to refresh yourselves on sort of the people we meet and the issues that they face day to day. It's that connection point with how this impacts their daily lives. You might remember people we spoke to, like Joe Bose. So he, for example, owns Hemptopia. If you're familiar with that business, he took a chance applying to the lottery process. Depending on how much cash you might have on hand as a business, you take that risk in the fact that the process, it required a $5,000 non-refundable fee for the application to then be allowed to participate in that particular lottery. In Hemptopia's case, this would have been for a dispensary license. But again, thousands of people applied. In fact, it was over 5,000 people in the end. The total license winners for the respective categories, around 70 or 80, give or take. But sort of a steady stream of some of these complaints based on our reporting is what spurred Allison Ball. And quote, Kentuckians should have confidence state offices operate with transparency and integrity. My office is committed to ensuring those standards. So perhaps, that is in the vein of what she was trying, or she is trying to look into when it comes to that. Other characters, in fact, one business owner who you'll hear from a little later, from Dee Dee Taylor. She runs 502 Hemp Wellness Center. Similar concerns, perhaps, because she was tuned in to see the lottery play out, that if in-state small businesses like hers, at least those within Kentucky, were going to be able to compete fairly in a system. But that is something you'll hear as we play out those conversations. So without further ado, what I was going to do is start with our updates from the state auditor, from Allison Ball, just to have that ready for you. Mind you, we'll have looking ahead for Wave News at 11 tonight. So make sure you tune in to join us for my focused reporting on that, based on what the auditor told us and reaction from a business owner, in this case, like Dee Dee Taylor, just so you have a focused idea of sort of the main takeaways that she has. And you'll hear from her throughout the whole conversation. But to distill it perhaps to the point is, the auditor's assertion on camera with us and on the record that They are finding instances where if you look at Kentucky regulations, and when we have this report up online on wave3.com, I'll make sure to point you in the right direction for that particular piece of the code of the regulation, that there was something set aside when it came to applying for medical cannabis licenses, that people could only apply for one category of license at a time to avoid what's called vertical integration. And you'll hear the auditor also discuss at least the claims and her assertion of what's called app stacking, or in the sense that a company could file multiple applications, but in this case using LLCs, and in this case to sort of help with their chances for gaining one of those licenses that were on the table. So perhaps we'll play you this part of, or we'll play you this conversation we had. Our team was able to drive out to talk to Auditor Ball out in her office, and these are her responses based on everything they had to share at that point into this particular investigation, the audit into the medical cannabis license lottery process.
A few weeks ago, we announced that we were doing an audit on the application process for the medical cannabis rollout here in Kentucky. So this is early stages yet. I don't have a lot to report. We usually wait until we finish out an audit before we reveal what we've uncovered. There are some things that I've been telling the public, just so you know what led us to where we are right now. We're mostly reviewing the application process. Now, we do follow threads. So if one thing opens up another thing, then we'll go down that road and we'll look into it and figure out what we need to figure out. But this is to ensure the public that this is fair across the board, that Kentucky farmers, Kentucky businesses get a fair shot at this as the law requires. And we're going to make sure that the law has been complied with in this process. Great question. So one of the things that people don't realize about my office is that we operate primarily on tips. We have several audits that we do regularly all the time. But when it comes to something that's out of the usual, out of the ordinary, that's usually because someone has made some complaints, they've made some inquiries, and that's exactly what happened in this instance. It actually began with several reporters who came to us and early last year, and so they had some concerns about the rollout, the application process for the medical cannabis in Kentucky. And, we get those kinds of reports all the time about a variety of things. So, we take a lot of things with a grain of salt. But when we get questions from reporters, when we get inquiries from reporters, usually they've done some investigative work to begin with. It's not usually a disgruntled person who's coming up to us. So if we get reporters, we take that seriously. And as we were getting these reports from the media, we also were getting reports from farmers, from local businesses, essentially saying the same thing. And when that happens, when you get a lot at one time, then that's a sign that you really do need to audit it. It's worth looking into, and that's what we're doing right now. That's my job. I am the state auditor. I make sure that the law is complied with, that things are done the right way, and this is what I exist to do. So they primarily focus around two instances that are concerning. The first one is we call it app stacking. And it's really application stacking, because you remember we're looking at the application process, and there's a regulation that was supposed to prevent app stacking, application stacking, and that means it's one company creating a lot of fictitious companies so that way they can file multiple applications. Not supposed to happen, and the reason why is it's supposed to be fair across the board, especially let small Kentucky farmers compete with big people out of state who have deep pockets. So the idea was really to prevent any kind of unfair situation, give everybody a shot at this process. And also there's a benefit to having local farmers because they're more likely to get this up and running quicker than an out-of-state company. So a lot of reasons why you prevent app stacking. We do know that app stacking has occurred. We can say that, that we're pretty confident that that's happened. We do know of at least one large out-of-state company that came in, and they had 350 applications that or LLCs that they created to have all these applications filed. So, that's a concern right there. That's a common thing that we began to hear from farmers and local businesses. Another one is vertical integration. And the way this was set up, it was supposed to spread opportunities across Kentucky to different businesses, different farmers. So you had cultivator licenses, you had processing licenses, and then you had dispensaries. So 3 different lines of the business here. And the idea was you didn't want a monopoly. You wanted to give everybody a fair shot. It's not supposed to be that one company can get licenses in each area. We do know of actually that same out-of-state Arkansas company. They have achieved vertical integration. They got a cultivation and processing, and they got 4 dispensaries. So we do know that this has happened here in Kentucky, and it's one of the things we're looking at because we know it happened once, and we're going to review and see if this happened more than once. And I get inquiries a lot. Businesses, different farmers. So you had cultivator licenses, you had processing licenses, and then you had dispensaries. So 3 different lines of the business here. And the idea is you didn't want a monopoly. You wanted to give everybody a fair shot. It's not supposed to be that one company can get licenses in each area. We do know of actually that same out-of-state Arkansas company. They have achieved vertical integration. They got a cultivation and processing, and they got 4 dispensaries. So we do know that this has happened here in Kentucky, and it's one of the things we're looking at because we know it happened once, and we're going to review and see if this happened more than once. And I get inquiries a lot from local farmers, local businesses. These are the little guys, and they will tell me, we felt like we were blocked out. We didn't have a fair shot at this. So my message to them is to encourage them. We're going to look into this, and we're going to make sure that if anything needs to get corrected, it gets corrected for the future. What can be done will be done, and we're going to find out the facts. Sure. Well, it's a long process. So it did begin with an application process, and that has its own steps. And we're looking at those steps. And then they had the actual lottery that was on TV. That's its own component. We're primarily looking at that application process. And as I said, audits sometimes reveal other areas and you go down other paths. It's very investigatory. I was a prosecutor for a number of years, and so I'm comfortable with following leads and seeing where things go. Our focus right now is that application process, and then also the awarding of those applications. So making sure that the rules were followed in the very beginning, because that impacts what happens at the very end. So you've got that early stage, the application process, then the lottery part where it was actually like the lottery that Kentucky has, like Kentucky Lottery, very similar. And then there's that final part where we're moving into now. As you know, nothing's operational yet. And that also gives us some concern. The governor had originally listed the early part of the year as a start date for medical cannabis in Kentucky. That has not happened. In fact, when he's been speaking about it, he's pushed the date out further and further. And right now, I think the official stance is that it's late summer, early fall. So it keeps moving. It keeps moving down. And that's one reason why we're doing an audit too, is why does it keep moving? The General Assembly is the one that made the decision that this should be available in Kentucky for people that have medical needs. And once that decision was made, then there needs to be compliance with the law and it needs to be operational. The app stacking is a recurring complaint that we've heard many, many times. And, when you get these complaints, and you usually kind of think to yourself, okay, is this someone who's just upset they didn't get an application? They didn't win. And so that's one reason why we've been actually a little bit slow to pursue this audit, because we didn't want to jump in just because somebody's disgruntled. That happens a lot. We get inquiries like that. We wanted to make sure that this was worthwhile. And this is the kind of work that the auditor is supposed to do for the people of Kentucky. So, we began to get inquiries last December, and we investigated as much as we could from public records and interviewing people, your preliminary steps to make sure this is the right thing to do. So it took us a while to feel like, okay, this isn't just a bunch of disgruntled people. We're hearing this a lot. And now there's some facts to back that up. So the app stacking is a major issue that we keep hearing about. And then the vertical integration is also a major issue, because we're not supposed to be setting up monopolies. It's supposed to be fair across the board. And it is important as far as speed. If you're bringing out of state people in to do this, this is a crop. It has to be grown. There are many local farmers who are already involved in hemp. They have land. They have a lot of things in place. Some of them already have a customer base so that they know how to run this kind of a thing. Those are the ones who are more likely to get this operational quickly. And that's one reason why you want it to be fair across the board. And that's what we're looking into. I don't think it was supposed to exclude out of state. And I think that that's important because, again, it's supposed to be fair across the board, right? But I think that you want local farmers, you want local businesses to be able to have a shot at getting this. And I think that's why the regulations were crafted the way they were crafted. That seems to be what the General Assembly was looking to do. Even the governor's administration, as they've talked about it, it sounds like the idea was making sure it's fair across the board. Local people can compete with out-of-state people who have deeper pockets. And there is a legitimate reason to make sure that local farmers, local businesses have a shot at this, because it will be quicker to be operational. Again, if you're out of state, you've got to buy land. You've got to set up your operation. You have to get to know the community and the people who are here. There are benefits to having local people besides just being from Kentucky. There's benefits in a very practical sense of this becomes operational more quickly. And that's one of those reasons why it's appropriate to have an audit. You look at, are the rules in place that actually make sure this is fair? And then are people following the rules? Are you complying with the law? So there's a lot of things to look at, and that's what we'll be doing in the next few months. I think the bulk, if not all, of the complaints we get are not just small businesses, though, but they're Kentucky businesses. We've gotten a lot of small farmers, but we've gotten some large organizations as well. We've also had some who said that they decided not to compete, not to try, because they didn't feel like there was a likelihood of them succeeding. So that raises questions about why did some local businesses think that they wouldn't have an opportunity to compete in this, and that's concerning as well. But most of our complaints have resulted from local Kentuckians, and that makes sense. They're the ones who know to reach out to the auditor. The out-of-state folks probably aren't as aware, it's the Kentucky ones, I think, that are most eager, most interested to get involved. It does, because you absolutely have a large out-of-state company that created multiple LLCs, hundreds of LLCs. So they did have multiple applications, an enormous amount of applications, and then they also achieved vertical integration. They were one of only 2 to receive third-tier processors, which is a significant processor. They are a large, wealthy, out-of-state company, so it makes sense that they're going to probably go for the big dollar, big things. But we do know that they app stacked, they had multiple applications, and they achieved vertical integration. So you have at least one that did that, and the laws were supposed to prevent that from happening. There may be others as well. In a general sense, they did what the regulations on app stacking were designed to stop. They create a lot of LLCs, which is an expensive thing to do. It's a time-consuming thing to do. We've had other companies we've identified that also did that. Sometimes they were, the addresses themselves were fictitious. It's an entirely different business. So that's concerning. So creating LLCs, they have to have different addresses. Finding out if those addresses are indeed real businesses, or is it just a sham? Is it something that's just a place so they can put an address on there? And then, of course, the vertical integration issue, it is concerning, too, because this was supposed to prevent monopolies from developing in Kentucky. And we know we have the possibility of one pretty strong monopoly coming out of this situation, since they got all 3. But the app stacking, I think, is a core problem right there, because that does make it very difficult for small farmers. A lot of people have invested their life savings into trying to get one of these applications. The applications themselves were non-refundable, and they were expensive. So I have talked to farmers who spent, some of them, tens of thousands of dollars trying to get a shot at this. And to know that somebody could come in and possibly not follow the rules and unfairly succeed in this is concerning, and something we're definitely looking at. Sure, and that's a fair question, and I don't think that we're at a point right at this stage where we can really comment to that level. So right now, what I'm telling you about is public knowledge, what we've been able to glean before we actually began the audit. And then I'm really careful not to weigh in too much about what audit results will be until we're done. We're thorough, we're careful, we investigate, and I don't want to prejudge things or make conclusions before we're ready. But when we are ready, we'll be releasing a report that documents what we've found and what we think needs to be done to fix anything, if anything needs to be fixed. Well, that's a great question. And that's one thing that I have learned, is that I'm very cautious on my timelines, because I think we need to be thorough, and we need to follow threads. So sometimes something is pretty discreet and you can look into one thing. This is one of those instances that it could lead to something else. So I'm careful not to give a timeline yet, but I will give people the assurance that we're going to work as fast as we possibly can. And we have no intention of slowing the rollout of medical cannabis in Kentucky. I don't foresee any reason why anything should be slowed down because of the work that we're doing. We're just making sure that things are fair, things are compliant, but we have an interest in the law being followed as quickly as possible. I'm doing my job as the state auditor, and I respond to the people when they come and tell me there's a problem. Then it's my job to look into it and see, is there a problem, and then make that information available to the public, to policymakers, anybody who needs to know. Oftentimes, my office is also responsible to make recommendations to fix problems, and I anticipate that's probably what will happen here. If we do find something, then we make those findings, we make that available. My job as the state auditor, I have a role that is specifically designed to be responsive to public concerns, and then I have the tools to investigate. So, that's what I was elected to do a little over a year ago here in Kentucky. I take that job very seriously. And when people bring things to me that they feel like needs to be addressed, we look into it, we investigate, and then when it rises to the level of an audit, we do it. I've always taken the position that if you feel like a program is compliant with the law, that it's in good shape, you shouldn't fear an audit. You shouldn't be concerned about it. So I'm always telling folks, hey, if you have done everything right, welcome an audit. That's good for you. If you feel like you've done everything, then there's no issues, then that gives the public the assurance this was done right. It stops whispering campaigns if there's something that's not accurate. So if you really feel like you've done everything right, then welcome an audit. It's a good thing to have an audit.
Would you say that everything was done right? Or would you say that no, things have not been done right?
Well, I do have absolute concerns, which is the reason why we're looking into it, because we know the app stacking has happened, and we do know that the vertical integration has occurred. So exactly the reason why it's a good time to have an audit.
So you just heard there, thanks to our photographer, our crew, who was able to go interview Auditor Ball. That would be our photojournalist, Mark Scheller. Shout out to Mark. In response, to having done the interview, checking in with Allison Ball, pending whatever the final result is of that audit investigation that she publishes. We also did reach out, given perhaps the criticism that, at least in her office or others, have levied at the process, or perhaps the delay in having dispensaries ready to go and be operational in Kentucky. We did reach out to Governor Beshear's office. A spokesperson responded to me, just letting, in my first initial correspondence, letting them know we had talked to Auditor Ball, and based on the comments she just shared there, that at least in the statement given to me by the governor's office, they're concerned that she was commenting on an ongoing investigation. Those are, from the governor's office words. And part of the statement is saying the lawmakers gave the Office of Medical Cannabis the authority to create a fair, transparent medical cannabis licensure process, including limiting who could apply for licenses in different categories. However, the law prohibits the office from limiting the sale of licenses to a buyer that meets the requirements of the law. So perhaps, that's the parsing and looking at least in the regulation, which is part of the Kentucky Administrative Regulations, which you can find online. We'll make sure to link that to you in the published version of the story tonight on wave3.com. So make sure to stick around with us. Coming up next, you'll hear from the business owner I talked to, one of several of those voices who filed those complaints, concerns with the auditor's office. And this was a conversation we had after finding out that the auditor had initiated that investigation, the audit into the license lottery process. So stick around for that for more Wave Extra. We'll see you in a bit. All right, welcome back, everyone, to this next portion of Wave Extra with yours truly, Jose Sosaya, talking about our in-depth coverage, following up on the latest on where the state auditor's investigation is going into the medical marijuana lottery, license lottery process. So what you're about to hear is, again, my conversation with the small business owner, 502 Health Wellness Centers, Dee Dee Taylor, and this was in the wake of or right after having found out that the auditor was initiating this investigation, at least into the process, her concerns that perhaps there was, an oversized opportunity for out-of-state companies with more capital, more resources to apply for a chance to win one of those licenses. So you'll hear part of our conversation as she waits to see what comes of the final audit presentation from Allison Ball's office. So we'll play that for you in a bit. Dee Dee, when I reached out to you, I maybe I'd forgotten to ask you straight up, but how did you find out about the auditor's office, going out there and saying they're going to start looking into the lottery license process? How'd you find out about that?
Actually, a news reporter told me that it was going to happen, so
Okay.
it was kind of leaked to me that way.
What were the first couple thoughts that ran through your head?
I'm glad. I'm very glad. I think it needed to be done. There's just so many questions around that whole lottery process that it was. I just think there was a lot of issues going on with it, and it needed to be done. She needed to take a look at it.
Mind if I ask, had you reached out to her office directly to file some sort of observation or complaint, or had you heard of others in your circle who wanted or had already reached out to her?
They actually reached out to me, and they got my number from another licensee that was denied. They gave my information to them, and they actually reached out to me. And yes, I told them exactly how I felt about it. So the one thing that really was concerning on my end was the fact that I never knew what my lottery number was. So in my thoughts, well, then how do I know it was truly a fair process if I don't even know what my ball number was? And that was the one thing that really kind of bugged me about the whole process, because I was like, any number could have been down with those balls. So you don't know.
Would you
so
mind? Would you mind emailing me that? What was that? What kind of confirmation did they ever send you? I'm so surprised to hear you say there's no ID number for you to have followed. What did they ever send you?
I got a confirmation email that said that I would be in the lottery drawing, but they do not tell you what your ball number is. None of that. You just have your application ID number, and that was not the same as the ball numbers. So, but yeah.
And all that time through the lottery, you wouldn't have known. Like if you had tuned in to listen for a number, you did not know what your number was going to be.
Yep, not at all. I had no clue. No clue.
When you talked to Auditor Ball's office, was there a sense you were getting of the kind of things they were going to look into? Did you get a sense that, what they were looking at sort of spoke to your concerns, everyone else's concerns in the license process?
Well, at first, I wasn't sure they were going to do anything about it. I mean, I know they were listening, and they, reached out to a lot of us about it, but I wasn't sure that anything was really going to happen. It wasn't until the story broke out that the local dispensary admitted to filing multiple applications. I had mentioned on another news story about how there's one particular company that filed multiple applications as well. So that kind of really got the ball going. But I think that breaking in the story, that really pushed the auditor's office to look into it. Someone was, admitting to app stacking. So, and that was supposed to not happen.
And to your understanding, that was never the intent. They should have caught that, much sooner rather than later, right?
Right. They talk about it being a loophole, but really it just ended up hurting the Kentucky businesses that were already here. What it did was it just brought an influx of outside companies coming in and creating these new businesses. So it padded the numbers and it padded the applications. A lot of the same new companies that were started listed the exact same owners for every single company. And the application listed every same owner. And the other thing that really bothered me about it was that they were very adamant that there would be no company that had a dispensary, a grow, and a processing license. And yet there's one company that has all of that, and they are vertically integrated now. And that was not supposed to happen. And then, there's people that actually won the lottery and they're trying to sell their license. So, some places are not even going to have a dispensary up and going or a grow because now those winners are just trying to sell it and profit off of it.
Your understanding, Dee Dee, and it's funny, I was having this conversation with my team just as like we're going about the story. Is it the Office of Medical Cannabis that has the license, the authority now to grant or rescind those licenses? Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding. I believe so.
I wanted to share with you just because I'd had a coworker was the one physically able to go to talk to Auditor Baum.
Mhm.
He sent me back. I'm just going to read it for you. I'm just giving you the quote text. So, no juicy details, but can confirm there was app stacking and vertical integration, which were against the rules.
Yep. That's what I'd been saying for months now. So even before the lottery drawing happened, I was just like, well, I think I just wasted my $5,000 for my application because I kind of figured, all that money coming in.
Does this, does it discourage you to, I'm sure you're someone, you have plans because, this is something as an industry and, small business owner, like you didn't lose the passion for this. I'm just curious, seeing all this happening, concurrently with whatever you've got going on, what have you been discussing with your team about what are the short-term steps you can take?
Well, all of the products I sell are federally legal and they're available for everyone. And most people aren't aware that, hemp is cannabis, cannabis is hemp, and hemp and marijuana actually comes from the same plant. A lot of people call it cousins, but that's not truly the case. It is the same Cannabis sativa. So for everyone that's waiting for this dispensary to open, we have product now. We have product available now. They really don't need to wait. And we're already educated. We've been doing this for a long time. We actually have the education behind us to educate our customers. And a lot of the new dispensaries, they're playing catch up because they really have no clue. They're, learning. They're going to be learning. It's going to be a learning process, but we're already here and already ready and already available. So I guess that's the one big thing that we're just trying to promote. You don't have to wait. We can offer you some help. And also, I'm not super worried, but I am, because a lot of states are moving towards only being able to buy any cannabis products at medical facilities. So states are promoting federally illegal products through their medical and recreational side, and they're not promoting the federally legal products. So that is a little bit worrisome, especially in my industry. And I'm also the president of the Kentucky Hemp Association. So collectively, we are a little worried about that, if that's the way that Kentucky's going to try and go as well and completely annihilate the hemp industry, which would hurt our farmers. It would hurt so many people that do rely on these products. And we've already established the rules and regulations through House Bill 544 with the cabinet. Most of my products have already been approved for sale through the cabinet. I've already gone through the testing, all of that stuff. So that's probably my biggest fear and the industry's biggest fear at this time.
Is it worthwhile for you, as the business or with the association? I don't know, obviously you've had the chance to sort of confer with the auditor's office. What's the result been to try and, have any conversations with the cabinet or the governor's administration up to this point? I know they maintain their position about the transparency, but sort of for you or for your peers, what's what are the steps you could take to sort of, come at them at the table, so to speak, to at least keep the conversation going?
Well, I haven't bothered really to do much of anything, if I'm being perfectly honest. Now, my husband, who applied for a processor's license, he has had an administrative hearing and he has hired an attorney because his application was denied and it should have never been denied. We worked together on those applications and filed the exact same paperwork, and his was denied and mine wasn't. So it made absolutely no sense. And he actually does have experience being a processor. So he is proceeding. We'll see what happens. So I mean, I would be happy if he got his money back, but I don't know if that will really happen. I mean, we kind of both knew that it was a gamble to a certain extent, not to this great of extent with all of the applications that ended up coming through. So I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of like, I don't want the program to be slowed down for people that do need access and want to get it through the medical program. I don't want to slow that part down because I do care about the customers that need it. I just wish there was some integrity, because it seems like that's what's missing in this state in general.
And I can hear the disappointment perhaps in your voice right there.
Very much so. And I thought it was going to be different. I really did. But yeah, it just seems like there's a big lack of integrity in the state.
Moving forward, I mean, of course, I'll keep you posted, since now I'm interested in whatever the timeline is going to be for the audit. Not that I'm saying you're wishing for a specific result, but what do you hope comes out of this?
I mean, it's hard to say because like I said, I still want it to proceed forward. I don't want the whole program to be dismantled. But I do think some of the people that got their license, I think they need to be looked at, because I'm not so sure that they have the best interests of the patients in mind. And I think it is very much money driven, and that I think is alarming, as it should be for anybody.
And in an economic conversation too, Dee Dee, I wonder if you think, I'm not sure about the supply chain aspect of it all for you, but to say, if you were to give that first position in line for, legitimately Kentucky small businesses and entrepreneurs, to say like, well, we know where the money's going, in that it stays in our food chain, so to speak. It's an interstate benefit versus, gaining profits for outside entities, right? I'm just saying, if the point was to, create an industry for Kentucky, you'd like those to be Kentucky dollars, right?
Yeah, that's what we thought was going to happen. I think all of us did, especially that have been in this industry for as long as we have. That's what I think all of us thought. It was going to be about Kentucky businesses, about our Kentucky farmers, about our Kentucky processors. We all thought that's what it was going to be about, and it just wasn't.
Was there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to touch on?
Not really. The only thing else that we have as an industry that's very alarming and sad, I will no longer be able to sell hemp beverages without a liquor license. So that ends at the end of this month. So I'm hoping we can get that changed as an industry, and I'll still be able to sell those products without an actual liquor license. But so far, the clock is.
In theory, it's not so much that, well, it just creates another layer of regulation for you in this. And I'm sure, forgive me because I haven't heard the argument from you, since we haven't had that conversation. If to say, you're going before the change makers, what's the argument to make to them? Unfortunately, now that you have to have that license, what's the argument to now make the change to what you're saying?
Well, we already have a license to sell hemp products, so there was no need for me to now get a liquor license because I'm not selling liquor. That's the entire argument. I get that they want to keep it 21 and up. That's fine. So do I. So some of the requirements for that, they just place an undue burden on the small hemp retailers, and it's not fair. I mean, in all respects, it's just not fair.
So again, thanks for sticking with us as we thank Dee Dee Taylor for her time. Just looking ahead to, it's a multi-layered issue as far as, the process, trying to weigh the pros and cons with access to medical marijuana, it being legalized not too long ago, a couple of years for Kentucky, seeing how the audit is going to play out. You heard, what she thinks about, some newer regulations when it comes to hemp beverages, and that's a separate license that she would have to obtain. So thanks for sticking with us here on this segment of Wave Extra. A reminder that if you tune in tonight, Wave News at 11, and we'll have the in-depth or the focus report for you on wave3.com as well, based on just the recap from the auditor's office, what they say they've looked into and found so far. We did reach out to the out-of-state company that she references as far as it goes in our interview, Dark Horse Cannabis, just reaching out for comment or statement based on what Auditor Ball had told us on the record in that interview. You'll also, have, when you pull up and have that article when it's ready online, the governor's office responds, maintaining the goal of it through the entire time was to be transparent and fair, having, the Kentucky Lottery come in to sort of run the mechanics of the process with the Office of Medical Cannabis and the regulations that they had set up. So still a work in progress when it comes to whatever comes of the final audit results itself. So appreciate you joining us for this latest segment of Wave Extra. So thanks again.